All right, welcome to Business of Motorsports here in the Dirty Mo studio. I'm super excited today for my guest, Jon Wood, who is the president of the Wood Brothers. Lord, 75 years next year for the Wood Brothers. Obviously, we've both grown up in the sport. Just really excited to have you on today. How's it going?
Well, could be better. Like I told you a minute ago, I'm in Pigeon Forge, and I'd rather be in 100 other places than Pigeon Forge during the holidays.
During the holidays. Well, we're going to talk about balancing family and work, which is what you're doing. So keep that in mind. You got a good family balance going on there with the family and hanging out with the kids.
Yeah, they're all here. You'll hear them. They'll come storming in a minute, I'm sure.
Oh, gosh. All right. Well, let's jump in so that you can get back to that. One of the reasons that I thought that you would be a great guest for Business of Motorsports today is this legacy of family. The fact that your generation, the third generation of the Woods, have kind of taken the reins for leadership. And so I want to get into that. But before we do that, I want you to talk about, growing up in the sport. You were a racer yourself, a little bit about that. Give a little background to kind of your history.
So I made the mistake of believing the dream that I think a lot of other young racers aspire to do, but I took the lazy route. When I was going through late elementary school and high school, I never thought that I would need anything other than to know how to be a race car driver. And the whole time my mom and dad are like, "Man, you need to learn how to play golf. You need to work on your grades, and you gotta have a backup plan." And I just thought, well, like, I don't need that. Like this racing thing will work. And then you fast forward 8 years later, 10 years later, and you wake up one day in November and it's not working anymore. And it's really, really, really hard to transition from spending your whole life just knowing that you're going to be a successful race car driver to now what do I do? And if I had the opportunity to do it over again, I wouldn't have been so lazy and so sorry and done hard and tried, because I had the ability in high school. There's no question about it.
Work harder. Yeah.
Just wouldn't have been so sorry. And that's a mistake I made. And when I call it a mistake, it's great to have these aspirations and hopes and dreams that you're gonna make it, but listen to your mom and dad when they say have a backup plan, because this is a very, very volatile, as you know,
yes,
super volatile business. And when you're in it and things are good, it's awesome, it's great. But when you're not in it, and more people have failed than continue to succeed.
That's right. A finite amount of positions available, right? I've heard that all my life. And there's now with the 3 top tier series, obviously, 100-ish or so teams there to or options to be able to drive, but that is tough. But I love what you said about listening to your parents, because that's a lesson. That's a lesson in business or anything in life.
Like, you think about it, in the NFL, there's 30 something teams, and within each team there's probably 50, or I don't even know how many.
Exactly. Yeah.
So do the math there. That's 1,500 players
exactly
on the low end. And that's just the NFL. You think about NASCAR, there's 3 top series. There are 30, give or take, drivers in each. That's 90 drivers in the world that make it. That's a small pool of people. And then expanding it even further, if there's 10 crew guys, 10 road guys on each team, that's 900 that make up.
It's still a small pool. Yeah.
It's such a small group of people. So
it is.
Fast.
So how did you make that transition? You realized that the driving part's not going to work out. What was your exposure to business, to the team, that led you into what you're doing today and the growth that you've had since you've been involved in the actual race team?
I would say that I'm still trying to figure this out. and I'm learning as I go. Everybody that's in a family business that doesn't run the family business, that are the on the lower end of the totem pole, like my sister and I would be, you always think that you could do it better, and you have all these ideas, and you constantly talk to other family members about how our dad's doing it wrong and how Lynn's doing it wrong. How they don't know what to do. And then, the longer you're in these positions and you're exposed to their way of running the business, the more you see, okay, I'm probably seeing this wrong. They're probably doing something right. They've been here since. This is a crazy thing to think about. 1950 is 5 years after World War II ended, and they have been in, the same people have owned this business and been showing up at a NASCAR race since 5 years after World War II ended. So they got to be doing something right, and that's the part I think that I've struggled with the most, is accepting their way of doing things as like a really good baseline, and then what would I do to improve on that, instead of how would I come in and just throw everything away and start over. And that's, I think, understanding that vantage point led me to have more responsibility and them trust me more.
Yeah.
A couple years ago, I was very rebellious in my attitude and my take on things. And as I began to say, okay, they're right, I started getting more responsibility. And fast forward to now, I mean, it was abrupt. I went from being just a nothing to running the company overnight, literally overnight. And that was an eye opener.
I was going to ask you how you balance them wanting to do it the way they've always done it and you coming in with creative new ideas, but you just explained the fact that you really have to respect and honor what has kept them here for all these years. What is the day-to-day like, with your dad and family and your aunt? There's three of them, right? Eddie, Lynn, and Kim.
Yep.
Yeah. And then your cousin also works in the sport too. So there's a lot of you there. Literally, what is it like what's a day look like when are you all together in meetings? How do you run things by each other? How does it work?
A lot of it is through group text on an iPhone. I mean, I'm really backwards, but Kim lives and stays a lot in Mooresville. Lynn is in Huntersville most of the time. He kind of goes to our Mooresville shop more than the rest. My dad's in Virginia. We're all over the place. Jordan's all of her kids. I've got the same issues with mine. So it's really hard to get us all in one place at one time, but you don't really need that. Like what we're doing right now. COVID opened the doors and made it okay to do things remotely. And while some things can't be replaced in person and in the office, a lot of what we do and a lot of the decisions that we make and brainstorming that goes on, we can do with a phone call. It's not that hard. And obviously we go to the races. Like that goes without saying.
Yeah. We the same way, right? Dealing with Dale and even Mr. Hendrick, he's not here, day to day. I get what you're saying in terms of just how you ask questions, make decisions, group text. I don't think we would have said years ago, oh, we'll be managing this business remotely. But like you said, COVID's made that possible for us. Tell me some things that you believe has led to the longevity of the Wood brothers.
The part that I have the most difficulty with, and I think it's the single most important aspect of the way our business works, our particular race team, is the relationships that have been formed and are ongoing that my dad and my uncle have with everybody at Ford, with everybody in the industry and NASCAR. It's in Penske. That's like crazy how it's like they're best friends with all these people. I'm more of a backhouse person, like doing things behind the scenes. I don't like it's not that I don't like the elbow rubbing or whatever you want to call it. I'm just not good at it. Like it's just not my way of, it's not my personality. And that's tough because I see the way that we've made it this long and the successes that we've had, and every bit of that is because of being good people, but the relationship that and the ongoing relationships that they have with all these key people. My dad will get text messages from Jim Farley daily, and it's like their BFF. Of course, and Mr. Ford are they go to movies together during speed weeks. They go and watch movies at a movie theater, literally still today, every speed weeks in Daytona. And who else can really say that they're friends with, you know, these calibers of people, and just they're just like normal people to them. I don't know, it just blows my mind, but I'm terrible at that, and that scares me because I see how important it is and how I struggle with it.
What are you doing to try to overcome that? I mean, it's a great, it's a good.
I don't know. It's tough because I don't have.
Well, you recognize it, so that's good, right? That's a
yeah, and like my wife will give me a hard time about it too. But like I don't have the things in common with a 75-year-old former Ford executive Ford family member. I just don't. It's harder for me to relate to guys like that, but my dad does because they grew up in the same era. They have a lot in common, and I don't. So I guess I'm just waiting.
Yeah, it's just a total generational shift, right? Yeah, I'm with you. I'm not. I always say it too. I'm not the one that can sell ice to the Eskimos. Like I'm not that person either. I like the. It's hard for me to be kind of the front line and the gripping and grinning and I don't go to all the races because it's just not my style. Like
the banquet. I saw you at the banquet.
Yeah.
How hard and you guys won the Xfinity title. So like you're up front and like it's about you, but like those things you I don't know how you feel about it. Are those environments hard for you to go to and go from person to person and either like being there or want to be good at pretending like you want to be there?
Yeah, it's hard because there is too many people there, and you can't spend the time that you may want to spend the time with someone. And that's one of the things I've always said about going to the racetrack is that you do have to be present, and depending on the role, it's more so or not, but you do have to be present, you do have to be visible, you do have to be seen, but I don't think business has to take place at the racetrack. There's not enough time. That everybody's going in a lot of different directions. You've got a specific agenda there. So I feel the same way about the banquet. It's great to see people, but it's hard to kind of move around. And I mean, there was so many people there. It was so crowded.
Feel stiff and you're like scrunched in there like this. I mean,
and then getting all dressed up and gussied up and all the challenges of parking and all that good stuff. Like all of those things start entering my mind. I'm like, oh my goodness, this is overwhelming. But like you said, sitting down there in front on the couch, being the champions, watching everything go, it was quite worth it when it was all said and done. So, what about some traditions that Glenn and Leonard have instilled that you feel like are still? Tell me, you're operating out of Stewart, Virginia, and Mooresville?
Yeah,
locations.
So like the business operations would be out of Virginia. Like that's where our offices are. And
got it. So your shop, the daily day-to-day shop stuff's down here in Mooresville.
In Mooresville. Yeah. So like the building of the race cars and all that crap happens in Mooresville, but like bills are paid and we have to have meetings and stuff that happens in Stewart. And it's just been that way forever.
So what are some of the traditions that are still alive that you see between, those locations? I mean, the fact that you're still doing business in Stewart, Virginia is one of them. That's the home base, hometown.
I don't know that we have traditions. I know that if you asked my dad and Lynn what they're most proud of, or if you just strike up a conversation, the conversation will veer toward the museum in Stewart and nothing about the race shop in Mooresville. Because that's the stuff that they're the most proud of. That's where we have the 71 Mercury and all the cars that Leonard, the tribute cars that Leonard has built. They're like restored cars of cars that we've had over the years, except for the Mercury, the Pearson Mercury. That's the real one. But like all that stuff is up there. And if you spend an hour just talking, somehow they're going to weave around and be talking about
Get back there.
the museum and not current day racing, even though they live for that. And people will ask, like, do they have plans of retiring? NASCAR isn't a business you die from it. You're in it until you die, like that, or you get run out, one or the other. It's not something that you just say, well, I'm tired, I'm going to go start fishing. You look at Mr. Penske. He's what, like 88 or something, like his late 80s. And Richard Childress, same thing. You don't age out of this business. It's almost like it's your hobby, it's your passion, and you're going to be there until you can't.
Exactly. Yeah. You said it best. You either die or get ran out. I like it.
We want to take a moment to talk about a true kitchen staple and partner of Junior Motorsports for 16 consecutive years, Hellmann's Mayonnaise, the #1 selling mayonnaise brand. For over 100 years, Hellmann's has been creating mayonnaise that's not just creamy and smooth, but it's made with real high-quality ingredients. It's that commitment to quality that makes Hellmann's stand out. Whether you're using it to make buffalo chicken dip for a game day tailgate or you're spreading it on your holiday turkey, Hellmann's always delivers that perfect velvet texture and rich, balanced flavor. Whether it's an appetizer, entree, or dessert, you can find recipes for game day or the holidays at Hellmann's.com. Hellmann's is the secret ingredient that makes every meal feel a little more special. So the next time you're in the store, grab yourself a jar of Hellmann's mayonnaise and taste the difference that real quality ingredients make.
All right, I'm going to switch gears a little bit. I want to ask you, you talked about the things that, are your strengths and weaknesses. I got a chance to be on in a group with Jordan a few months ago and listen to her, and she's the CMO of the Wood Brothers. Tell me about some family dynamic stuff going on, because obviously working with my brother, I get asked that all the time. What's it like working with your brother? What's it like working with your sister, your cousins, your family? How do you balance those relationships? Does it ever get in the way?
No. So my grandpa did an extraordinarily good job of shaping his 3 kids to appreciate each other, to complement each other, and complement each other's weaknesses and strengths, but to treat each of themselves equally. If you asked them, now my dad was the one that ran things for years, and Lynn probably does a little bit more so now, but they would tell you that each of the other 3 each of the other 2 are totally equal on the same footing. And that's probably the one thing that's led to us continuing to survive. Family businesses fail more than they don't. And it's because one guy feels like he's getting screwed out of money or equity or whatever it is. And we're not like that. I'm the exact same as Jordan and Kevin. Those 3 are the same, and we're just on different levels. But continuing to get along, not fight, throw out the jealousy, that's the secret to making this work. And it's tough at times. You can't help but get aggravated. You can't help but feel like you're doing more. You're pulling more weight than somebody else, or you've spent more hours working on apparel than somebody else, or working on our 75th anniversary. And I'll admit, I haven't really done a lot in that. Jordan, that's her deal. But if you average it all out over the course of a year, we all probably do about the same, and we all have equal say in some of the bigger decisions.
Yeah.
When I said that we have that group text, that's how a lot of things are decided is, Lynn or whoever will say, what do you guys think about this? And we all have an opinion. And
Yeah, that's a lot of mutual respect, right?
Worked, yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. So you mentioned earlier, just kind of the lessons and what it's taken you to get to where you are in terms of realizing, how the business works and keeping understanding why the Wood Brothers has been so successful all these years. I want to flip to. I remember a few years ago, everybody's like, "You got to go to the Wood Brothers social media. You got to go to the Wood Brothers social media." And that's something that you read, and I know that you're very into being authentic and to who you are. You've talked a lot about that today, right? And those weaknesses, and you're learning to work on that.
That's a challenge. Jeff Dickerson, the owner of Spire.
Yep.
He gave me a hard time a couple of weeks ago because he said that he had told his social team, it's me and Jordan, like for us. It's just there's no such thing as a team. But he said he told his social team, you guys got to look at the Wood Brothers Twitter account. This is how things need to be done. And they go and look at it and they're like, okay, it's just some pictures and that's it. And he's like, you made me look stupid. I'm sitting here playing you up, and then I send my guys over, and they're like, well, there's nothing here.
You've calmed down.
I have, and the reason is, like, I look back to where I was 5 years ago, and it was almost like I had no consequence. If I cussed on there or if I said something controversial, my dad might be mad, but we're not going to lose a sponsor because they can just blame me. They can just say, well,
he's just a kid.
Yeah. He's stupid. He wasn't paying attention. But
now you're the president. You can't be stupid.
Right. And it's not, it's just different. I got in trouble a few times. They gave me free reign to do whatever I wanted. And I think they realized that it worked more than it didn't. And fortunately, there never was an incident, like something bad happening, but there could have been. And also now, I look back at where we've been in the past, I don't know, even 4 years, even before Harrison. It's really hard to be fun when you're struggling at the racetrack. Mm-hmm. It's easy when you're performing. Our season with Blaney, or 2 seasons with Blaney, even Paul Menard, we were always competitive, and in the last half of our tenure, there's been some struggles, and it's harder to do that stuff and not make it look like you're distracted when those things are going on, and you're just talking.
Yeah, are you taking it serious, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Like, are you taking this sport serious? Yeah. If you're not being serious on social media, right? And to your partners, to the industry, to other people, to the peers, to everybody that's sitting out there criticizing and judging on social media, which happens a lot.
Oh, it's crazy. But I tell myself, if we get back where we should be, and this isn't something I've said now or a year ago or 2 years ago. It's just an ongoing. Things will get better tomorrow, and I'll get back into it and having fun with it again. I don't know if I tried, I don't know that I would have that ability again, because in the back of my mind, I don't want to screw up and lose this opportunity that I've got now, because it's a lot more important to me to do right by running the company than it is to do right by gaining social media following. I know that's a balance, but I take it to the extreme.
Jordan talked about the pressure that she feels on your generation of taking over the Wood Brothers. Do you feel that pressure? How do you look at that?
I don't necessarily feel it that it's pressure. I feel like
it's a responsibility.
Yeah, if we fail, it's going to look like and probably be our fault. I want this business to continue, and a lot of people will ask, like, do you plan on your kids running the company one day? You can't plan that. Let's rewind back to my very first comment. You can't plan that far out. Even if you're Rick Hendrick, even if you're Joe Gibbs, you can't plan. You can't have a 10 or 15 year plan, because look what happened to Stuart Haas.
I've said that about this. This sport doesn't allow you that. It goes year to year. It does not allow. There's not enough pre-planning. It has never worked that way. Ever, 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 ever.
It's great when you're in it, but when you're not in it, it's no fun. And
Yeah.
I think of how my driving tenure went and those feelings, and I don't want to relive that with the race team side. So I want it to succeed. It has to succeed. But long term, you can't. I'm not saying that I don't think we'll make it. I'm just saying let's plan for something else. And then if we get to that point in 10 years where you have an opportunity to work in this company, okay, let's do it.
Yeah. So you mentioned, the past few years you haven't had the success that you wanted to have as a team, but you did get the 100th Wood Brothers win. How did that change things for you? What was that like? The immense amount of elation out there in the middle of the grass there.
It's crazy because it was so unexpected. Like we haven't been in a position. Your levels of performance are kind of like they're just levels. You go from let's hope we make the race. We've been there. We were in a position 10 years ago. Let's just hope we make the race. To well, let's hope we can not run in the 30s. Let's be a top 15 team. Let's be a top 10 team. You don't just magically go from running mid 20s to contending for a win. So this was never even the remotest thought in the back of my mind that this might happen. And we go to Daytona and like halfway, Harrison's running 10th. 20 to go, he's running 5th. There's a caution with however how many laps it was to go. He lines up on the front row, but you're just waiting for that thing to happen that always happens, that where he gets screwed somehow. And even coming off of turn 4, he's got a comfortable lead, and it never dawned on me, just like I'm watching that car just like this, and it's like, well, it's gonna catch on fire. The asphalt's gonna go away, like reset. It just this can't be happening. And even after he'd won the race, it still just didn't process. It was just like, what? Like, did this just really happen? And everybody's going crazy. And it took me a minute to really, almost like I was just confused because it just didn't seem real. And then as time went on and everybody made their way to the front stretch, it started to make more sense. But I could not pick a single driver in that field that I would be happier for, even if it wasn't for us. If Harrison drove for somebody else, the struggles that kid has had and the way he has endured it and his level of maturity and continuing to show up and have a positive attitude, like, I'm so glad it was him that got it. Looking back, at the time, I wasn't sure. I didn't know if this was the cornerstone that we really needed, like if it just fit right. But after we went to the media center and after I saw what it meant to him, what it meant to his fiance, what it meant to Kim and Jeff isn't somebody that sits in the front row and makes a lot of noise. He was in the very, very back of the room, kind of like this, just real quiet. But I know what it meant to him also. And for them to have that experience, I was more happy for him, I think, than us. And I truly, and right now, same thing. I hope that he feels like that win gave him an opportunity to reinvent himself and to come back as a successful driver in NASCAR.
You guys have a partnership with Penske, and you've talked about some of your different drivers through the years. You're going to start the 2025 season with Josh Berry, who I'm very familiar with as an Xfinity driver, Junior Motorsports. Fantastic. Yep. How difficult is it to make those changes? What's that process like? And what are you looking forward to for 25?
It's a little tougher for us because we're more of in a development position within Ford, mostly within Ford, but also a little bit within Team Penske too. We kind of helped shape some of their up and coming guys, and our driver position has been not a revolving door, but we've had a few in recent years. Look at Denny Hamlin; he's been in the same car for 20 years or something crazy. We've had like 5 drivers or more in that same amount of time. And it's tough to really, as soon as you get comfortable and as soon as you're on a good place with these guys, something changes and there's a switch and then there's a new one. I got to a point with Harrison where I was comfortable. I've given this example before, but like I think back to midways through this last season, Lynn woke up with something wrong with his knee, and we don't have a motorhome or anything like that, so we park where the crew guys park. But Lynn couldn't walk that day, couldn't walk well, and I texted Harrison and said, "Hey, can you go see if you can find a pass for us to park in the DO lot because Lynn can't walk well?" And he's like, "Yeah, no problem." So he drops what he's doing, goes to the NASCAR trailer, and I don't know who all he asked, but did his part to try to find a pass for us when he didn't have to do that. And I think back, how many other drivers have we had that I would feel comfortable even asking that in the first place, but that they would have bothered to go and do it.
Yeah.
And that's another hat tip to Harrison, but it's kind of where you get to these point. It takes a while to get to this point with these guys, and it feels like as soon as we get there, we've got a new one. And I look forward to Josh. I still don't know him super well, but he's been a lot more of just a normal guy than a lot of the other drivers that we've hired that come in. A lot of the others come in as a little bit bigger personalities than even what I feel like I'm looking up to him, even though that's think about. But with Josh, it's just like, hey man, like, tell me about, I don't know, something. And he's just you know all about it, you know.
Yeah.
But he doesn't have that intimidating feel to him or something. I don't know.
He's super down to earth.
I'm looking forward to it.
I just was thinking, and I don't know what I'd love to hear your perspective in general, because I say the same thing about us in the Xfinity series. You know, you get a Chase Elliott in here, or we got a William Byron, and we get to have them for a year, maybe 2 years. And really, that's the trajectory of most Xfinity drivers, right? I mean, they don't want to stay in the series any more than 2 years.
Yeah.
They want to go cup racing. What's your perspective about, the ages that these drivers are coming in, the pressure or the expectation for them to perform right away and all of those kinds of things? I'm just curious of your perspective, not necessarily related to your team, but just in general.
I think it probably has a net negative. And you asked me, and so I'm going to give you my perspective. I think it's harder for the average NASCAR fan to relate to the drivers in 2024 than it was in 2015 and 2010, 2005. They were closer in age to the average fan, the drivers, I mean.
Mm-hmm.
They had a similar background. They might have grown up in construction or, I don't know, any number of things. These guys now, and it's not all of them, but it's a lot of them, they race because they can, not because it's a passion, or not because it's either make it as a race car driver or go back to being dirt poor. That type of driver doesn't exist anymore. Josh is the closest thing I know of to that in the up and coming category, because he's not the guy that has a super rich dad that funded whatever he wanted until he got tired of it. He's just not that.
Yeah.
But and that's why I think Josh is going to have a great following, more so than even he does now. But Junior is one of those guys I'm thinking about. Tony Stewart. There's a long list of drivers that your average race car or an average NASCAR fan just could relate to. They pulled for them because they felt like they were looking at themselves, and that just doesn't. That's not what we got now. And then
yes, definitely not as prevalent. I think that way, like on the sponsorship side, it's hard for even, partners and sponsors to, how do you influence a consumer at 18 years of age? It's very difficult, like what you need experience, you need, you just need worldly life experience, right? To be able to influence and have an effect on people. So I hear you there. Josh is going to be great. I mean, spent years in our late model and has definitely come up through the ranks. So I'm excited to see him continue forward after the SHR stuff went on. What's the hardest part of being in your role as president of Wood Brothers?
The relationship stuff.
Yeah.
Which that's the single most important part. I think back to some super missed opportunities. My dad and Lynn were invited by, I don't know if they own it or they just run it, but it's the Miami Grand Prix.
Oh yeah, I don't know.
They got invited. They used to own a race team, in fact, and Miami Dolphins. They got some connection to the Dolphins, but they owned. Doesn't matter. Anyway, they were invited to the F1 race in the chairman's suite or whatever this title is, and I thought of every opportunity to not go than to go. The thought of being there, stuck there for 3 days around people I didn't know, around people that I can't relate to because they're just in a different class. I wasn't going to go no matter what. And there's been a lot of those different things that have happened. And I look back, why did I do that? I should have just sucked it up and went. Those are the things I've got to overcome. I don't know if it's some kind of anxiety. I don't know what it, and everybody has different levels of anxiety, and some of it is social anxiety. Some of it is, I don't know, just all sorts. But mine is, I just don't want to do these things where I'm forced to carry on a conversation with somebody that I just don't know and that might think I'm a redneck. I just don't. I don't know. But I got to get over that crap because
kind of like, do you deserve a seat at the table? It sounds like, like, are you worthy of that? To kind of sit at the seat of the table of somebody that's, on the Miami Dolphins and runs the Miami Grand Prix. I get it. I feel it. I am so with you. Do you realize though, after you've done something like that, do you usually feel good and okay about it and how it went?
I typically do. I think an okay.
Yeah, I generally do too. I have the same anxiety. I have anxiety about doing this show, and
that don't bother me. Like going on DBC, like that was, I was at home with that.
Well,
crap.
DBC is your kind of show.
Yeah.
Doorbell for Claire.
I mean, like we're able to talk and there's dialogue, and you wanted to talk to me. It wasn't like at least I think.
I did, yes.
Like that you were forced into doing it, but like if it was something that, here's another great example. Let's say this was some other podcast where the host wasn't familiar with NASCAR and they're asking like, how fast does their NASCAR go? I'm gonna like wig out, and it's not because of the level of questions. It's because I know they deep down just don't care what I
care. Yeah. No, after I came out of that round table with Jordan, I was like, man, I need to pay attention more and want to know more because I see Jordan at Millbridge and racing and all, but I just don't know you guys. And I was like, man, there is just it was fascinating because I just saw a lot of similarities, from the family aspect and coming in and carrying on a legacy that you guys are doing. So
you probably feel the pressure too, right? Like, yeah. I mean, I know you're the one that's supposed to be asking the questions, but like, what's it like for you with being Dale Jr.'s sister, but being in a position where you're the boss? Like, how do you feel about it?
Yeah, it's different and interesting because obviously, he'll say he needs me too, but I need him more than he needs me, so to speak, right? Because I get to run his businesses, and he is what makes and breaks Junior Motorsports and our partnerships and our relationships and all the different things that he does. So, but I'm on the tail end of this. I feel like you and Jordan are just getting started, in your career of business as it relates to moving forward with your team. So I hope I'm retiring like in, I don't know, 5 or 10 years or something. We'll see. What kind of changes? Like, talk a little bit about NASCAR and this because your team very much embodies this. Talk about the responsibility to protect and take care of our long-term core NASCAR racing fans, but yet reach a new generation of fans so that we can continue to be doing this well into the future. What does NASCAR, are they doing a good job at that? What do they need to be doing? Kind of your take on that.
So they're the guys they've got, I want to think, are a lot smarter than I am about this stuff. If you look at it if you look at it from my perspective, which is just a total idiot, let's take politics. The dumbest thing somebody in a position of a driver or whatever could do is to come out and say, vote for Kamala or vote for Donald Trump. Picking a side, you're not going to grow your base. You're gonna cut some. You're never gonna, if you start out with 100 and you make 50 mad, you're down to 50. Even you can have those feelings, but broadcasting that, you're only going to cut your numbers instead of growing those numbers. And if you taking that mindset and looking at it in what you asked about, how do you grow the fan base but take care of the ones you've already got, making decisions that alienate the existing fan base is not the thing to do, because you're not going to replace the ones you lose with new ones. You got to take care of the old ones first. In other words, you have to make decisions that the current fan base like, but that also the newer ones can either live with or be happy about too, to come in and grow instead of lose some and hope you replace those with more. That's just, I know that's way oversimplifying it, but I don't think you can, and I don't think NASCAR's doing that either. I know that you've got a very vocal group of people on Facebook, for instance, that will say, well, I'm never watching again. After what they did this weekend, I'm done. And then the next weekend, they're in the same spot saying, I'm done. I'm never watching again. They're always watching. But I don't think NASCAR's done any single one thing that's been so bad that they've lost people. I think what's hurt more than anything is losing stars.
Yeah.
Losing your Dale Juniors, your Tony Stewarts, and Jeff Gordon's. Those things happened in a very, very short time span, and that hurt. Losing those stars and not really having a good pool of guys to replace them, that hurt more than I think any decision that NASCAR's made from a competition perspective. It's just easy to blame them.
Yeah. I know. I think about that too. Like, as you were saying that, I always remind myself that generation after generation have experienced change, right? So whether it was when the television was invented to now we're streaming, or whether it was when the car was invented or whatever it is. I mean, I'm sure that the generations before us went, oh, televisions, oh, these are going to ruin those kids, they're not going to be outside anymore. And we say the same thing today about, iPads and video games and all of that stuff. And it's just a part of life. But, at some point you do have to introduce, like, coming into NASCAR next year in the 25 season, we're going to have streaming partners and, regular network partners, right? For that balance. But I hear the same thing. I'm not watching anything on Amazon. I'm not watching anything on this, and hopefully they'll be there. We'll see. But you got to introduce it because you'll get left behind eventually.
Yeah.
Right?
You can't just continue to say, look at where NASCAR would be if they kept their original business model of everything happens at the racetrack. It's all about the fan that's in the stands. If they continued that from 1950 or 1960 or whenever it was that started, and they just completely ignored television, we wouldn't be having this conversation right now.
Yeah, absolutely.
You have to adapt, and you have to adjust your business model as technology changes and people consume this sport in different ways than they did even 10 years ago, 5 years ago. It's very much changing. You just have to keep up, and that's that.
What has been one of the most rewarding parts of your journey with the Wood brothers and your family?
There's a lot of experiences that are just so cliche. I talk about a win, or I talk about a fan day that we had, or the Hall of Fame induction for my grandpa and my great uncle Leonard. All those things, yeah, they're wonderful. But the fact that we're able to continue to have these experiences together, that's the part that I appreciate the most, is we've somehow managed to stay grounded enough and respectful of each other enough that we haven't had disputes within our business, which is also our family, that have created rifts that we couldn't overcome. Nothing that no challenge that we've had, we weren't able to figure out a way around. We faced some really, 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 really troubling times, and sitting down, talking about it, being rational, and not giving up. And those relationships that I keep going back to have made it to where we're still able to show up to the 2025 Daytona 500 and hopefully the 2035.
Well, I'm looking forward to the 2025 Daytona 500 with you and Josh Berry for sure. We'll be watching. We keep an eye on all of these previous junior motorsports drivers and just want to see them be successful. So I'll be watching the 21 car next year for sure. All right, we're going to leave with the question that I ask all guests. Best advice you've been given in the industry, and if you know who gave it to you, if you remember who gave it to you.
Okay, so this is another, not the one you're going to remember tomorrow, but it stuck with me. We're at an owners meeting. This was one of the I can't remember if it was strictly just teams or if NASCAR was involved as well. But Cal Wells, in one of the conversations, he's raised his hand and he's telling whoever it was. So like, everybody here knows if you're not growing, you're dying. And he was talking about growing as like their race team or as an industry. But that one phrase, and he said it like, this is just such common knowledge. Everybody knows if you're not growing, you're dying. And I thought about that for a minute, and it's like, okay, every single success that we've had either was because of growth or it led to some kind of growth that made it to where we got to keep going. And how do I apply that mindset? How do I apply that philosophy to my new position and grow our business? I don't want to change it. I don't want to change the fundamentals of what Wood Brothers Racing is and has become and will always be. I don't want to change any of that. I want to think of ways to grow. And so of all the weird, crazy things that people have said, and it's surprising,
I love it.
That one stuck with me. And I try to remember that whenever I'm asked a question or thinking of something to do within our team. How do I approach this? What should we do here? We need to think about it with an emphasis on growing.
Yeah, great way to look at it. Are we growing it, or are we going to kill it, right? So I love that. Well, I see you growing into the 2025 season. I'm super excited that you took time from your family vacation here in Pigeon Forge as much as you don't want to be there. It is a cool place. Come on now.
Keep talking. Like, we don't have to stop.
You're like, the kids have left me alone. Everybody's left me alone. Maybe this is better. What are they going to go make you do next? Look at some Christmas lights or something?
I don't know. So the latest one is the Hatfield and McCoy thing.
Show.
We did that one last year, so now we'll have to beat it in the ground and do it again for the next 3 years. Dollywood, I'm sure at some point. The Titanic exhibit's pretty neat. There's so much to do here, but if you pick the wrong week and there's a bunch of people, it's miserable.
It's a hard place to get around for sure, no matter what. Well, enjoy the time. Thank you so much for being with me today on Business of Motorsports. For all you listeners out there, we'll hit us up again next week. We'll be here.